Madrid 2026, the tournament that broke the tour, and why Sinner was the only one standing. Madrid 2026 didn't just deliver tennis, it delivered chaos, controversy, and one of the most jaw-dropping weeks the sport has seen in years. Before a single ball was even struck in anger, the draw had already taken a catastrophic hit. Carlos Alcaraz, the reigning crowd favorite, the man most capable of challenging Jannik Sinner, pulled out with a wrist injury. Then Novak Djokovic. Then Jack Draper, who now faces the very real prospect of falling outside the top 100, given that he'll also miss Roland Garros. Fritz, Tabilo, Korda, the list of absentees kept growing. And on the women's side, Madison Keys, Anastasia Sobolova, Muchova, and others followed suit. Then, as if the injury toll wasn't enough, food poisoning entered the chat. Shrimp tacos, yes, shrimp tacos, became one of the most discussed topics in tennis for an entire week. Coco Gauff vomited on court during her third-round match. Swiatek had to retire mid-match against Ons Jabeur. Over 31 players across both tours either withdrew or retired during the tournament. 31. That number alone says everything you need to know about the grueling, unforgiving nature of the ATP and WTA calendar in 2026. Yet through all of it, the withdrawals, the upsets, the underarm serves, the moan balls, the cramping players, one man remained completely untouchable. Jannik Sinner didn't just win Madrid, he authored another chapter in what is becoming one of the most dominant runs in Masters-level tennis history. 5 consecutive Masters 1000 titles, 9 Masters titles in total, a 28-match winning streak in Masters events. Stats so absurd they almost don't compute when you read them. The tour has a Sinner problem. And nobody, not Zverev, not Fearnley, not anyone in the draw, has found an answer yet. This wasn't a tournament that Sinner scraped through. It was one he commanded, controlled, and ultimately dominated with a level of tennis that left commentators, analysts, and fellow professionals searching for the right words. We're watching history being written in real time, and the story is only getting started. If you want to stay on top of every twist and turn this clay season, from Rome to Roland Garros, make sure you're subscribed to Tennis Insider. Hit that bell, don't miss a thing. A draw in ruins, how injuries and shrimp tacos defined Madrid before it even began. There's a particular kind of drama that exists before a tournament even begins, the kind that sets the tone for everything that follows. Madrid 2026 had that energy in abundance, and not for good reasons. The draw was effectively decimated before the first serve was hit. Alcaraz's wrist injury had been a growing concern for weeks, but when the confirmation came that he would miss not just Madrid, but also Rome and Roland Garros, the tennis world paused. This wasn't just about rankings or title defenses. It was about the health of the sport's most exciting rivalry. Without Alcaraz, the clay season loses a dimension. His battles with Sinner have been the defining narrative of this era. And with Carlos sidelined, the question shifted from, can anyone beat Sinner? To, can anyone even push him? Novak Djokovic's withdrawal added another layer of uncertainty. Draper, who had been in strong form heading into the clay swing, also pulled out. A significant blow, given that he'll now likely slide out of the top 100 by the time Roland Garros arrives. On the men's side, the absences created a vacuum in the draw. Fritz and Tabilo skipped the tournament entirely, decisions that, in hindsight, looked rather smart given how the week unfolded. On the women's side, the losses were equally significant.
Madison Keys, a serious clay court threat, was absent. Samovoa and Muchova, players capable of deep runs, were also out. But nothing captured the imagination and the dark humor of tennis Twitter quite like the shrimp taco storyline. Food poisoning swept through the player hotel, or at least through a significant portion of the draw. Players fell ill at an alarming rate. Coco Gauff's on-court sickness during her third-round match was difficult to watch. Swiatek's mid-match retirement was a sad end to what could have been a deep run. The conditions in Madrid, the altitude, the heat, the physical demands, already push players to their limits. Add a plate of bad seafood into the mix, and you have a tournament that tested every competitor's body in ways no training camp ever could. Over 31 players across both tours withdrew or retired. That figure is staggering, and it raises serious questions about scheduling, recovery time, and player welfare on the modern tour. Sinner's road to 5, breaking down every win in Madrid. When you win 5 consecutive Masters 1000 titles, every match on the road to that 5th title takes on a different kind of weight. Each win adds another brick to an already monumental structure. So let's go through what Sinner actually did in Madrid, round by round, because the details matter. His opener came against Bonzi, a tricky assignment on clay, especially with the conditions still unfamiliar. Sinner dropped the first set, showing the kind of vulnerability that his opponents had been hoping to exploit. But the response was telling. Rather than panicking, he recalibrated, found his level, and came through in 3 sets. Bonzi played aggressively and, in doing so, became only the 2nd man in 5 Masters 1000 tournaments to take a set off Sinner. That context is important. Sinner's dominance at this level has been so complete that dropping a set is now a notable statistic. Next came Elmer Moller, a Danish qualifier ranked 169 in the world. This was the kind of match where top players can sometimes be caught off guard. Unknown opponent, strange game style, low expectations. Sinner dispatched him in 77 minutes. Clean, efficient, no drama. The round of 16 brought a more intriguing challenge in Nishikori, or rather, in the tactics that came with it. Like several other players this week, Norrie turned to the underarm serve as a last resort against Sinner. It didn't work. The underarm serve has become a talking point across the tennis world ever since Nuno Borges deployed it on match point in Barcelona, and opinions are divided. But as a tactic against Sinner, it's particularly ineffective. He reads the game too quickly, moves too well, and punishes any hesitation. The quarterfinal against Hadar was tighter through the first 4 games before Sinner took full control, eventually winning the 2nd set with an imperious 7-0 tiebreak after going on an 11-point run to close the match. Then came the semifinal against Fearnley, 87 minutes, steamrolled, no debate. And the final against Zverev, which lasted just 57 minutes, 5 matches, 5 wins, 1 more title. The architecture of a champion. The underarm serve debate. Gimmick, tactic, or sign of desperation. One of the most talked about moments of the Madrid clay swing wasn't a backhand winner or a stunning passing shot. It was an underarm serve. And depending on who you ask, it was either a brilliant tactical innovation, a sign of desperation, or a slightly embarrassing moment for the sport. The debate has been raging since Nuno Borges used one against Echevarri on match point in Barcelona, a moment that sparked outrage, admiration, and everything in between. By the time Madrid rolled around, multiple players had attempted underarm serves against Sinner. None of them worked, and that in itself tells a story. Against most players, an underarm serve can catch someone off guard. It forces movement, disrupts rhythm, and can win cheap points if the opponent is caught sleeping. But Sinner is not most players. His court awareness, his recovery speed, and his ability to read an opponent's intentions make the underarm serve a particularly risky proposition. The deeper conversation here is about the rules and the culture of tennis. Underarm serves are entirely legal. They always have been. And in a sport where creativity and tactical variation are encouraged, there's an argument that dismissing the underarm serve as not in the spirit of the game is both elitist and intellectually lazy. Every other sport allows players to use every legal tool at their disposal. Tennis should be no different. At the same time, when a player is deploying an underarm serve not as a genuine tactical weapon, but as a Hail Mary born of desperation, as was clearly the case with Norrie against Sinner, it does raise questions about effectiveness. The problem isn't the tactic itself. The problem is the situation that necessitates it. When you're facing Jannik Sinner on clay and you've run out of conventional options, the underarm serve is essentially waving a white flag with extra steps. The real issue isn't the underarm serve. It's that Sinner has made so many conventional tactics redundant that players are being forced into the unconventional. And that says more about his dominance than any statistic ever could. Rafa Hadar and Alexander Bloxs meet the next generation making its mark. Madrid 2026 will be remembered for Sinner's dominance, yes, but it should also be remembered as the week that two members of the next generation announced themselves on the biggest clay stage. Rafa Hadar and Alexander Bloxs both made the semifinals, and in doing so, sent a clear message. The future of men's tennis is arriving faster than anyone expected. Let's start with Hadar. The young Spaniard, playing in his home tournament, benefited from the altitude and the partisan crowd in Madrid, but don't let that diminish what he achieved. Before facing Sinner in the quarterfinals, he had to beat Fana in a match that generated enormous buzz. It was the first ever clash between the only two teenagers currently inside the top 100, and Hadar won it in 3 sets of the highest quality. The margins were razor thin. 80 points were played in the first set, with each player winning exactly 40. The tiebreak was decided by Fana's 3 forehand errors early on, a tiny window of opportunity that Hadar seized. Then came the second set, where Fana served better and drew level before Hadar took the decider with an early break and played some of his best tennis to close it out. For a debut at this level, it was remarkable. Top 35 performances in your home Masters 1000 as a teenager? That's not just promising, that's the foundation of a career. Alexander Bloxs brought something completely different to the draw. At 6 feet 4 inches with a massive serve and what analysts have described as a nuclear forehand, the 21-year-old was outside the top 100 just 2 months ago. 4 wins against top 20 opponents in April alone, all in straight sets. His run to the semifinals, including ending Ruud's title defense in the quarterfinals, was both stunning and completely logical when you look at the tools he possesses. His floor as a player appears to be extraordinarily high, and the consensus from those who have faced him is that he is very much here to stay. Neither Hadar nor Bloxs will win a Masters 1000 title tomorrow. But give them 12 months, and the conversation will be very different. The 90s kids are fading. Ruud, Tsitsipas, Rublev, and Medvedev in crisis. While the next generation was busy announcing its arrival in Madrid, the generation that preceded it was busy unraveling in slow motion. The 90s cohort, the players who were supposed to be in their prime, who were supposed to be challenging at the very top, are finding clay season 2026 a deeply uncomfortable experience. Casper Ruud came into Madrid as the defending champion. He looked sharp early, dropping just 1 game against Munar in the first round. But then came the moonballs from Davidovich Fokina, and suddenly Ruud looked rattled. He survived that match, then saved 2 match points against Tsitsipas, but ultimately had no answers for Bloxs' power in the quarterfinals. As a result, Ruud will drop out of the top 20 for the first time since May 2021. That is a significant decline for a player who, not long ago, was a consistent finalist at Roland Garros. Tsitsipas is the story that is hardest to watch. Once considered a legitimate Grand Slam contender, the Greek star now finds himself outside the top 70. His self-awareness about the situation, I feel like something I've lost recently is that, suggests he knows exactly what's happening, even if he hasn't yet found a solution. For a player with his talent and his game style, being outside the top 70 is genuinely shocking. The clay is supposed to be his surface. The fact that he's struggling here above all others is the most alarming sign. Rublev, the 2024 Madrid champion, was dumped out in the second round by Capria. His recent results form a pattern that is hard to explain away. Meanwhile, Medvedev continues his complicated relationship with clay. A double bagel in Monte Carlo, 2 wins before falling to Caboli in Madrid. Can he do anything on this surface? At this point, genuinely, nobody knows. What ties all of these stories together is the sense that the generation that was supposed to push through is instead being pushed aside, not by Sinner and Alcaraz, but by players even younger than they are. The American meltdown in Madrid, what went wrong for the US men? For American tennis fans, Madrid 2026 was an absolute nightmare. The top American men came into the tournament with legitimate reasons for optimism and left having provided almost nothing in the way of results. The combined performance of the American contingent at this tournament will not make comfortable reading for the USTA. Ben Shelton, one of the most exciting players on tour and a genuine title threat on faster surfaces, fell to Prismic in the first round after a brutal 3-hour battle. That loss made Shelton just the second top 50 player that Prismic has beaten, which speaks both to Prismic's quality on this occasion and to how far below his best Shelton was. On clay, Shelton's game, built around a massive lefty serve and explosive athleticism, is less potent than on hard courts, but a first-round exit is still a significant underperformance. Tommy Paul, who has been one of the more consistent American performers over the past few seasons, also exited early, losing to Tirante. Christopher Eubanks failed to build on his recent progress. Tien, perhaps the most promising of the emerging American wave, couldn't get past 21-year-old qualifier Danny Vallejo in the first round. The irony, of course, is that Fritz and Tabilo, by skipping the tournament entirely, ended up being the biggest winners among the American contingent, as the commentator in the video noted with clear sarcasm. Their rankings didn't take a hit, their confidence wasn't dented. But their absence also means they contributed nothing to American tennis's standing on the European clay circuit. The Americans have historically struggled on clay compared to their performances on hard courts and grass. But the depth of the struggles this week, multiple first-round exits, no player reaching the quarterfinals, suggests structural issues that go beyond individual performance. Until American players develop a more complete clay court game, the European swing will continue to be their weakest period of the year. Zverev's nightmare, 57 minutes, 9 consecutive losses, and a final that never was. There is something almost poetic about Alexander Zverev's relationship with Jannik Sinner. Poetic in the tragic sense. Zverev is, objectively, one of the best players in the world. He finished 2025 ranked in the top 5. He makes finals at the biggest tournaments. He is a Grand Slam champion. And yet, when he faces Sinner, something happens that defies rational explanation. The tennis he plays, which is good enough to beat almost everyone else on the planet, simply isn't good enough. The numbers are damning. Heading into the Madrid final, Zverev had lost 8 consecutive matches against Sinner, winning just 2 of 19 sets across those 8 matches. 2 sets, 19 sets played. That's not a losing streak, that's a psychological and tactical crisis. And then the final happened. 17 minutes into the match, Sinner was already 5-0 up in the first set. Zverev had won just 5 points in those 5 games. 5 points. It was, by any measure, one of the most lopsided openings to a major final in recent memory. Zverev eventually held serve to get on the scoreboard, but Sinner took the set 6-1 with a clinical efficiency that left little room for analysis beyond, this is a man playing at a completely different level. The second set was marginally more competitive, but only marginally. Sinner broke Zverev twice, going 4-for-4 on breakpoints. The match was over in 57 minutes. Sinner's highest ever performance rating since records began in 2022, even higher than Alcaraz's celebrated demolition of Fearnley in Doha.
What makes the Sinner-Zverev dynamic so compelling and so uncomfortable to watch is that Zverev clearly belongs in this conversation. He is not a pushover. He is not unworthy of finals. He simply cannot crack the code of a man who, at this moment in time, has no apparent weaknesses. The 65 consecutive service games won against Zverev alone is a statistic that speaks to Sinner's complete dominance. WTA magic in Madrid, Baptiste's Cinderella run, and Kostyuk's dominant title. Amid all the Sinner storylines and next-gen narratives, Madrid 2026 also delivered some of the most compelling tennis of the year on the WTA side. And it deserves to be told with the same enthusiasm. Start with Hailey Baptiste. The American, who has battled through injuries and ranking setbacks that would have broken a lesser competitor, saved 6 match points to defeat world number 1 Aryna Sabalenka in the quarterfinals. 6 match points against the best player in the world, on a surface where Sabalenka is a known threat. The serve and forehand that Baptiste wielded throughout the week were devastating, but her improved movement, sharper, more decisive, more confident, was arguably the most impressive element of her performance. 3 seeds eliminated, a semi-final appearance, and a top 25 debut. For a player who has had to fight for every ranking point she's ever earned, this was a genuinely emotional week. The tennis world knows Baptiste's story, and watching her thrive on the biggest stage was one of the highlights of the clay season so far. And then there was Marta Kostyuk.
The Ukrainian powered her way to a first WTA 1000 title with a straight sets victory over Mira Andreeva in the final, a performance built on raw power, intelligent defense, and remarkable composure under pressure. The second set swung wildly in momentum, but Kostyuk was clutch when it mattered most, going 4 for 4 on breakpoints in the final. 2 top 10 wins in 1 week. 12 wins and 0 losses on clay in 2026. Back-to-back titles on the surface. A top 15 debut. The backflip at match point will live forever on social media, but the tennis that preceded it deserves equal celebration. Kostyuk is not just performing well, she is playing with the kind of sustainable excellence that suggests this is not a hot streak. This is the emergence of a genuine major contender. Andreeva, still young, will have her time, but this week belonged entirely to Kostyuk. Rome awaits, Sinner's Golden Masters bid, and what comes next for the tour. Madrid ended, Rome begins, and the story of the 2026 clay season is moving at a pace that demands full, undivided attention. The central question heading into Rome is one that the tennis world has been debating since Sunday evening. Should Sinner play? The argument for skipping Rome is straightforward. With Alcaraz already absent from both Rome and Roland Garros, Sinner has a massive opportunity to extend his points lead and arrive at Paris as the overwhelming favorite. Playing Rome risks injury, carries the physical toll of additional matches on clay, and adds pressure to what is already a historic run. The smarter play, some argue, is to rest, recover, and arrive at Roland Garros fresh. But there is another argument entirely. Sinner has the chance to become the youngest man in history to complete the career Golden Masters, winning all 9 Masters 1000 events. He has won 8. Rome would be the 9th. That is not an opportunity that presents itself twice. Records of this magnitude are generational, and Sinner is in the form of his life. Heading into Rome, Sinner now has over 14,300 ranking points, a staggering figure built over just 2 months of tennis in which he has completely overturned a 3,000-plus point deficit against Alcaraz. He has won 28 consecutive matches at Masters events, closing in rapidly on Novak Djokovic's historic record of 31. The trajectory is almost incomprehensible when you zoom out and look at the numbers. The rest of the tour will arrive in Rome knowing that the mountain they need to climb is higher than ever. Zverev will try again. The next-gen stars will push. And somewhere, Alcaraz will be rehabbing, watching, and preparing for his own return. When that return comes, likely at Wimbledon, the narrative shifts again. But for now, the tour belongs to Sinner. Rome is next. Roland Garros looms. And the question isn't whether Sinner can be stopped, It's whether anyone on this planet has even figured out how to try. If
The Ukrainian powered her way to a first WTA 1000 title with a straight sets victory over Mira Andreeva in the final, a performance built on raw power, intelligent defense, and remarkable composure under pressure. The second set swung wildly in momentum, but Kostyuk was clutch when it mattered most, going 4 for 4 on breakpoints in the final. 2 top 10 wins in 1 week, 12 wins and 0 losses on clay in 2026. Back-to-back titles on the surface, a top 15 debut. The backflip at match point will live forever on social media, but the tennis that preceded it deserves equal celebration. Kostyuk is not just performing well, she is playing with the kind of sustainable excellence that suggests this is not a hot streak. This is the emergence of a genuine major contender. Andreeva, still young, will have her time, but this week belonged entirely to Kostyuk. Rome awaits, Sinner's Golden Masters bid, and what comes next for the tour. Madrid ended, Rome begins, and the story of the 2026 clay season is moving at a pace that demands full, undivided attention. The central question heading into Rome is one that the tennis world has been debating since Sunday evening. Should Sinner play? The argument for skipping Rome is straightforward. With Alcaraz already absent from both Rome and Roland Garros, Sinner has a massive opportunity to extend his points lead and arrive at Paris as the overwhelming favorite. Playing Rome risks injury, carries the physical toll of additional matches on clay, and adds pressure to what is already a historic run. The smarter play, some argue, is to rest, recover, and arrive at Roland Garros fresh. But there is another argument entirely. Sinner has the chance to become the youngest man in history to complete the career Golden Masters, winning all 9 Masters 1000 events. He has won 8. Rome would be the 9th. That is not an opportunity that presents itself twice. Records of this magnitude are generational, and Sinner is in the form of his life. Heading into Rome, Sinner now has over 14,300 ranking points, a staggering figure built over just 2 months of tennis in which he has completely overturned a 3,000-plus point deficit against Alcaraz. He has won 28 consecutive matches at Masters events, closing in rapidly on Novak Djokovic's historic record of 31. The trajectory is almost incomprehensible when you zoom out and look at the numbers. The rest of the tour will arrive in Rome knowing that the mountain they need to climb is higher than ever. Zverev will try again. The NextGen stars will push. And somewhere, Alcaraz will be rehabbing, watching, and preparing for his own return. When that return comes, likely at Wimbledon, the narrative shifts again. But for now, the tour belongs to Sinner. Rome is next. Roland Garros looms. And the question isn't whether Sinner can be stopped. It's whether anyone on this planet has even figured out how to try. If you want every analysis, breakdown, and deep dive as the clay season reaches its climax, subscribe to Tennis Insider right now. Hit the notification bell, turn on all alerts, and join the community that takes tennis seriously. The best tennis of the year is still ahead. Don't miss a single point.